CY. Welcome to our first ever CG night. As you can see, you're not around 75 streaming kids right now. You're probably at a house or here at the church offices eating some banging food. So the idea behind this change. Me and Pastor Ryan really felt led by the Lord to do this, to shake up the whole model of CY. And the heart is for you guys to grow together, for you guys to learn and share your griefs, your burdens, your joys together, to grow in your relationship with Jesus together, to learn about him together, to do life with one another. We believe that God has created us for a community, and we just know that he's going to bless this. So thank you. Thank you for signing up. Thank you for registering. Thank you for doing this whole thing with us, and thank you for coming today. So being with Jesus, what does that mean? What is being with Jesus? Well, it's focusing on him. It's sitting in his presence. It's being silent and understanding his realness. The Apostle Paul, he says it this way. He uses the word to contemplate. It says, now us with unveiled faces can contemplate the Lord's glory. And that word, it really just means to look at, to ponder, to kind of chew on. So we're fixing our eyes, we're looking at Jesus. We're looking to him. We're understanding that he is here with us. That is being with Jesus. It's just being present. There's this story of, I think, this 16th century farmer who he went into the church and the priest asked him, he's like, dude, why are you here? Because this farmer, he would be there for hours. So the priest is like, don't you have a farm to tend to? Don't you have things to do, sir? And the farmer says this, very wisely, he says, I look at him being Jesus. He looks at me, and we're happy. And that's so true. There's this old theologian that said, God is love, loving. God is love, loving. So God in his very being is love. God is love, and he loves us, and we love him. So it's just understanding that God in all his beauty, all his glory, all his just power loves us. A God who has the power to create, to destroy, to do anything he wants in his very nature is love, and he loves us. It's understanding that God went to the cross to die for you. That's what being with Jesus, understanding. It's sitting in that love. See, sitting with Jesus, it's both spiritual and practical. See, the practical side is that the company you keep, the more you'll become like that company, right? The more you're around someone, the more you'll become like them. See, the more we're around Jesus, the more we will become like him. And the spiritual side is even greater. See, being with Jesus is about emptying ourselves. It's about emptying ourselves so that the presence of God can fill us. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Being with Jesus is life-changing. It's the most important practice of a Christian life. Without being with Jesus, we can't produce fruit. Jesus says, apart from the vine, we can do nothing. And he's the vine and we are the branches, and cut off from him, we can't do anything. So we must be with Jesus. So how do we do that? Hey guys, we're back with Pastor Ryan. So we just talked about what it means to be with Jesus. So we just said it's focusing on him, it's contemplating him, it's being with him, it's sitting alone and understanding that his presence is there. So to further elaborate on that, or to explain how to be with Jesus, I want to read something that Jesus said. So in Matthew 6, Jesus is talking about prayer. And he says, but when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in the secret place. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So the secret place. It's not a word we really use a lot. It sounds very mysterious, but what Jesus is saying there, he's pretty much just saying get alone in silence and solitude. So what does silence and solitude mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the really simple way to think about silence is just quiet, somewhere that it's quiet. There's not outside noise. And then with solitude, being alone. So somewhere that no other people are. So it's you and Jesus in a quiet place. That's all there is to it. Silence and solitude.
Yeah. So what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so for me, that place is an upstairs room in my house that's just an empty room with a carpet. And so my habit is first thing in the morning, every single day, when I get up, I go get a cup of coffee and come back upstairs to that room.
Yeah.
And I spend 20 minutes just me and the Lord, me and Jesus. I sit crisscross applesauce on the floor, and I have a Bible and notebook. And so usually I'll read a psalm and pray through that as I'm reading it. And then I like to record just a verse from that psalm that just jumped out to me, something that I feel like the Lord is speaking to me in that moment. And try to meditate on that as well. But then I just spend the rest of the time in silence, just contemplating the Lord, as you said. And so what that is it's focusing just completely on his presence and on who he is. And so for me, I'm able to kind of center on that by closing my eyes and just picturing Jesus going to the cross, picturing him carrying that crossbeam and thinking about what he must have been thinking and feeling in that moment, and knowing that what is driving him in that moment is love, like love for you, love for me, like love for this whole world, the whole creation, every person in it is driving him to embrace anything necessary, any cost, any sacrifice, any pain. And so when I think about that, like even in this moment talking about it, like it fires me up. You know, like I'm like, a lot of times I just like I'm overwhelmed by the love of God and feel that loving that you talked about. So
yeah. So for me, it looks pretty similar. My time alone with the Lord, my secret place, a lot of times is a room by myself. But lately, I've been walking. I've been leaving my house, walking outside in the mornings, and it's still in the mornings, like you. For me, it has to be in the mornings because throughout the day, that means I'm focusing on the Lord still. It's carrying into my day. And that isn't the way it has to be for everyone, but for me, it just makes sense that way. If I were to do it at night, I would go to sleep, I would kind of lose some of that focus I had that morning. But I go outside, I just listen. I be with him. I be with God in his creation. And that's kind of what centers me with him sometimes. That's kind of what brings me back to him, along with thinking about the Lord's suffering for me. And it's huge. And it's that same thing. The longer I'm in it, the more and more I just feel his presence. I feel his love. It's amazing. It's the best part of my day. So what are some other practices that you've heard about?
Yeah. So, for instance, I know of one guy that for him, it's kind of like mine. Like he sits in a room alone, but what he does to kind of center his attention, to contemplate the Lord, to focus on him, he imagines a place that he's been to before, where it's like he saw like the clouds rolling over the mountains, and he said he thinks of like those clouds remind him of like the love of God just permeating like every part of him as it goes over the mountains. And so he puts that image in his head to start, and just kind of sits there and just like invites the Holy Spirit in to speak to him. And then another guy more like you that I know of, he has a park across the street from where he lives, and it's in Portland, and so he'll just go walk in the park. And it's funny, it's kind of a combination of you and me. Like he likes to pray through a psalm and then go out and walk. And he said, especially in the wintertime when it's freezing cold, like for him, feeling that cold air, like the chill against his face, just makes him feel so alive to God. Awesome. And like the birds singing in the trees and things like that. So it can be active, it can be inactive, it can be inside, it can be outside. It doesn't matter where, as long as there's silence, it's quiet, and there's solitude, you're alone. Those are the two keys.
Yeah. So the 17th century Christian, Brother Lawrence, he talked about being with Jesus as he's skilled. And his skill is something you practice, something you get better at. So guys, the practice is habit. This has to be habit. So for me, some days it's 5 minutes, some days it's 15 minutes, some days it's 30 minutes, some days it's even an hour. And even if it's 5 minutes, I still understand it's a habit and I have to do it. Not because it's a check mark, not because it's something I have to do in my day. No, it's something that I need to get better at. I want to keep getting better at. And I need that time in the Lord in the morning to center me, to be able to contemplate him in his glory.
I think that's the key, is you need it. Right? Like it's not, like you said, you don't have to do it because it's merit based, or like God's going to love you more if you do it. It's because you need that time in order to become a person who looks like Jesus. Right?
100%. 100%. Thank you. Nice. That's awesome. All right. In conclusion, we talked about what it is to be with Jesus. It's to contemplate him. It's to focus on him. It's to understand his presence is here. It's to think about him. And then we talked about ways of how we be with Jesus. I shared my practice. Pastor Ryan shared his practices. And we kind of both agreed on the same thing. One of the most important things about this is habit. It's sticking with it. And I think someone who puts it in really good words is John Mark Comer. He's an author of the book Practicing the Way. And in it, he talks about how we waste our time on so many other things that don't give life like Jesus does. Jesus, he's the living water. He's the source of life. He is everything. And this is what the author says. He says the one non-negotiable rule of being with Jesus is this: keep showing up. Save the process until you experience what all the fuss is about. Don't stop until you know by direct experience what I'm stumbling to name with words. For years, when I read about monks and nuns who gave up a normal life to do little else besides pray, I think they were a little crazy. But what if we're the ones who are unhinged? We would rather binge Netflix or go shopping or play fantasy football than commune with loving. Who would rather give the vast majority of our time to slaving away for some job that will chew us up and spit us out the moment we're no longer useful to the bottom line? Who choose to spend hours every day on our phones yet claim we don't have time for God? What if we're the ones who have lost touch of reality? Who are wasting our lives on trivial things? Is your heart waking up yet? Is there a flame down in your soul starting to burn with desire for friendship with Jesus? If so, let me offer you hope. You can take hold of the life that is truly life, the life that Jesus died to make possible. Here's a good place to start. Go and find what Jesus called the secret place. Guys, the one thing you cannot do is say you don't have time to be with Jesus. There's nothing else more important. There's nothing else in your day that is more important than being with Jesus. So find the time. There's no excuses. Thank you guys for coming to our first ever community group.